Hey Booktube, it's Angie. I have a couple of tag videos to knock out today. First one I meant to do around Halloween, but I went to film it the day of Halloween and it just got too crazy with trying to do last minute prep and decorations and trying to film while trick-or-treaters were coming in. It just got to be a bit much, so I decided not to do it on Halloween, and then it just kept getting pushed aside for other stuff. So I need to get to these because I set aside the books for the tag questions for both of these videos. Now they keep piling up on my library floor, so I want to go ahead and knock them out so that I can have my library floor back, the books can go back where they're supposed to go, and I can have some semblance of order in here again. I know it doesn't look like it behind me, but I do try to have some order. It's not just like just a floor of books in here. I try to keep the floor picked up. So anyway, the first tag I wanted to do was the Addams Family Book Tag. This went around a lot right around the holiday, the Halloween season, and I'm going to keep my glasses on through this just because the glasses right now are hiding a little bit of the fatigue in my face. So, alright, Addams Family Book Tag. The first question is, I forgot to mention, the original of this was done by Hannah BooksAndBeauty, and I will link the video below for those who are interested who haven't done it yet. The first question is, Morticia Addams is the mother and a witch. What is your favorite witch book? One of my favorite witch books is The Crucible by Arthur Miller, which is just a play written around the idea of the Salem witch trials. So that was one, but I was trying to think of an actual novel that had a witch character that stuck out in my mind. And I was having trouble thinking of one that had one specific witch that was really memorable to me. Because a lot of times I read witch books that are just it's about a group of women. I don't know, you could maybe count Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, might be a good one. That would be up there. But the one that came to mind was this series by Justin Gustanis. This is, what is the series called? I think it's the Quincy Morris series. There's 4 or 5 in the series, but it's about the guy in the series is a supernatural investigator, and he works with a woman who is a white witch, and she battles people that are using witchcraft for evil. And I really liked that concept in this story, that she is a white witch that's going against bad witches. And she, in this story, is the white witch is Libby Chastain. So I said Libby Chastain for my memorable witch. Number 2 is Gomez Addams is a loving father. Who is your favorite fictional dad? Again, I was having trouble trying to remember a memorable dad in a series, but the one that came to mind was the dad from Maggie's dad from the Inkheart series. I really like that even if you don't always agree with why he did what he did, he's always very open about the fact that he does it because he doesn't want Maggie to get hurt. And he's very protective, he's very attentive towards her, he's always about keeping her safe and entertained. I don't want to give away too much in the series, but what he does, he gave up a lot as far as what he could have had personally to make sure that Maggie has a good life. So the dad from Inkheart was the one that came to mind for that. Number 3 is Uncle Fester can generate electricity. What books make you light up so much that you cannot stop talking about them? I had a hard time thinking of specific books that do this. I know I've raved about the Theater Illuminata trilogy. That's one that I talk a lot about. But I was thinking just genre-wise, books that I rave about are usually within either historical fiction or paranormal fiction. So I just put genre-wise. It would be something within those 2 genres would be books I would be silly raving about. Number 4 is Wednesday Addams is obsessed with death. If you could have killed off one character in any book, who would it have been? And this one took me a minute because the characters I kept thinking of, they do actually die in this series. So I'm like, they're already getting killed off. So I need somebody that you could actually go back and kill off. And the ones that came to mind were, first of all, The Guard in A Dream of Lights by Carrie Drury. This is about a young girl who is stuck in a concentration camp in North Korea. And she's only like, I think in the story she's like 13, 14, somewhere in there. And there's a guard in this story that is just relentlessly hounding her and making her life hell, and like she doesn't know why he fixates on her, but he's always sneaking up on her and saying, you know, when you least expect it, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna attack you, you're never gonna know when it's coming. And he just, every day he has her in this paranoia. So yeah, he's just evil. And so I said him from that. And then I also thought of Humbert Humbert from Lolita. I don't know if I pulled Lolita. Did I? I might have not pulled my copy of Lolita. But yeah, I said Humbert Humbert from Lolita. Just because he is just a creepy, creepy bastard. And he just ruins her life. And he brain warps her enough to think that... He has her thinking that... You know, at first she thinks that she can get out of this, and then he has her thinking that maybe she deserved this somehow, and just like he just mind fucks her for years, and it's just he just made me so sick. And so yeah, I said Humbert Humbert from Lolita. Number 5. Pugsley Addams has a vicious nature and plays nasty pranks on everyone. Who is your favorite villain? And I had to say Phantom of the Opera, the Phantom from Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, because he was one of those villains that like everybody assumes is the bad guy in the story, but he feels very misunderstood. Like if someone would just take a minute and listen to him, he wouldn't get as evil as people perceive him. Like he's just acting out these things because nobody would take him seriously as a soul. Number 6 is Lurch is based on Frankenstein and a zombie. What is your favorite adaptation of a story? One of the ones that came to mind was Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion, because it's a zombie take on the Romeo and Juliet story, which I thought was really unique when I first read it. And it took me about half the book to figure out that's what was going on. And then I remember getting halfway through and going, this is reminding me of something. And then when I went back and realized that the characters were R and Julie, I was like, oh my god. So yeah, that's actually one of my favorite adaptation ideas, was Warm Bodies. Number 7 is Grandmama is an old classic witch. What is your favorite old classic horror book? And again, I would say Phantom of the Opera, but I would also say Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Because it's just, again, I don't know if I pulled... Did I pull Frankenstein? I don't know if I pulled my copy of Frankenstein. But yeah, I would say Frankenstein. Just because it's a classic. Again, it has that theme of, you know, you have a villain, but maybe if people would hear the villain out, then wouldn't be such a bad guy. So yeah, Frankenstein or the Phantom. Number 8 is show us some of your horror books. I have a bunch of Stephen King kind of buried in my shelves back there. I didn't feel like getting all of those out, so I just grabbed the ones that were a little bit more accessible. By Seth Grahame-Smith, I have How to Survive a Horror Movie, which is a hilarious parody manual book he did about just like all the cliches of horror movies. It gives you a guide of how to make it to the end. So that one, and also his book Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I love Seth Grahame-Smith's writing, so yeah, I have a bunch of his stuff around. By Richard Madison, I have I Am Legend and Hell House, 2 of his horror books. By Joe Hill, I have Horns and Nosferatu. I have classic Dracula by Bram Stoker. I also have Dracula the Undead by Dr. Stoker, who is a descendant of Bram Stoker. I have I didn't know if this, I figured this counted as horror, even though it's not that terrifying as far as horror goes. It's more just like weird. But I have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This other has, and it says Other Terrifying Tales, so it has some of the other short stories he did, but this is by Robert Louis Stevenson. Those. I have Dust by Joan Frances Turner. This is, I think when I started BookTube, I had mentioned that a lot of the books I read as far as like zombies and vampires, I tend to gravitate towards parody versions because a lot of times it's hard for me to take like the serious version seriously. But this was one that I branched out into as far as like, it's not a parody novel, but it's a zombie novel that actually has a lot of heart. The zombies are given a lot of soul and personality and snarkiness, and I just loved it. There are 2 or 3 more in this series, but I don't have them. But yeah, I said Dust by Joan Frances Turner, which is a zombie book. And then lastly, I have the Hunt series. I'm not sure what this actual series is called, but it's The Hunt, The Trap, and The Prey. These are all by Andrew Fukuda, and I haven't read these yet, but I believe they're a vampire series. Again, not parody, an actual vampire series, but I had heard good things about this, so I thought I would try it out. So those are some of my horror books that I had on the immediate outsides of my shelves. Number 9 says, what are you going for as Halloween this year? I think I had mentioned it in a previous video that I was doing the Crayola thing, but I will try to insert a picture here of what my costume was at the end, because I actually ended up adding a few pieces to what was originally shown in one of my old videos. Number 10 is some of your favorite Halloween films. I'm a big fan of cheesy horror movies, really any time of year, but especially during the holidays, or the Halloween holiday. I like watching really cheesy horror or horror comedy, really like badly produced slasher movies just crack me up and entertain me. So yeah, I usually watch a slew of those, but I was trying to think of like favorites that I go to a lot, and most of the ones I came up with were all Tim Burton movies, like Edward Scissorhands and Coraline and Sweeney Todd, Sleepy Hollow. I don't know did Tim Burton do Sleepy Hollow? Thinking he did, because Johnny Depp was in it, and it's rare anymore that Johnny Depp does a movie that's not Tim Burton. And I say Nightmare Before Christmas, Nightmare Before Christmas. Otherwise, outside of that, the ones I could think of were, I love The Crow, the Brandon Lee movie, Beetlejuice, and Dracula, the one where Gary Oldman played Dracula. Love that movie. One I could think of was Zombieland. I could watch Zombieland over and over. I never get tired of that movie. So those are some of my favorite kind of horror movies. I don't know. It's hard for me to distinguish what like legit horror would be, because a lot of it, like the honest horror, that doesn't do a lot as far as like scare me most of the time. So I figured, like, is it horror? Because I didn't get scared. But yeah, those were the ones that came to mind for that. And that is the Addams Family Book Tag. So stay tuned, and I'll have another one coming up shortly. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next one. Bye.